Hi guys. Okay, so now we move on to the last chapter in your course. That's water reticulation system pengagian air, right? Okay, again we give thanks to Puan Faiza for the slides, which I have modified slightly. Okay, let's see. Okay, for introduction, you can see here that when we talk about water reticulation, we talk about the design, operation and maintenance of water distribution, stormwater and wastewater collection system. So it's a big system. However, when in this chapter, we are going to focus just on raw water coming in from the river, going through the treatment, and then going out, being distributed to all the users, end users like you, me, the industries and all. Alright, and water reticulation works will include the construction and maintenance of all the public pipeworks, pumping systems and access chambers. Right? So hopefully after today's lecture we'll come to see water reticulation more clearly, and when we start seeing some pipes or some what we call menara air around in our housing area, we'll be more aware of what they do and why they are being placed there. Okay, as an overview of who are the people taking care of our water supplies, right? What we call the Malaysia Water Authority. It is under KETA actually, Kementerian Tenaga Hijau dan Air, and under this ministry we have what we call SPAN. There's a Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Air Negara. You must have come across this term before. Okay, and before we go any further from there, let's look at the left hand side of this flowchart. You can see that there's a Ministry of Finance. All ministry work the same, even for the Ministry of Higher Education, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Transportation. The Ministry of Finance is always on the side providing the funds for running all the operations. Come down from Ministry of Finance under the Pengurusan Aset Air Berhad to oversee all the other water authorities in different states in the country. Okay, now let's go through again. And we have WSIA 2006. This is a body that's been set up, I can read in the legend down here, to provide the legal framework required for the regulation of water and sewage service industry. Okay, and coming down there, we have SPAN's representatives that oversee the water supply services and sewage services. So sewage is obviously under IWK. We won't be looking at this. I believe you've already seen this in your earlier chapters with the IR Highway. So for the water supplies, you'll be familiar with these companies. I'm sure if you are from Johor, we know it's SAJ. If you're Malacca, you call SAMBI. Negeri Sembilan is called Science, and so on and so forth. Right? And Selangor obviously is Shabah. Sometimes a bit contradictory there because of the water shortage and so on and so forth. Right, so now you know who are these companies answering to. Right? At the end of it is the Ministry KETA. Okay, now let's look at the typical water supply system that we have. What we know is that at the end of it, we are here, we are the consumers. We know we turn on the tap, the water will come gushing out. When there's no water coming out, then we know that maybe if it's in Johor, SAJ, Malacca, SAMBI, the water truck will come to distribute water. And when before that happens, usually we have notices being dropped in our mailbox and things like that. But if it's a sudden cut out of water, then it could be a burst pipe because of construction nearby. And it could be like many years ago, because of some contamination inadvertently found in the reservoir of Durian Tunggal, Malacca many years ago, and so the water needed to be drained out and recycled. Hence we had weeks without water. Okay, and but typically this is how they look like. At the very beginning, we will have what we call water catchment area. Alright, I believe you learned about this in detail in your hydrology class. We call water catchment. Essentially, we look at the topographical map. We look at the highest point, and usually it's a place that has pristine, the high grounds of foliage. Foliage means you have plants and all. So we are talking about the forest. Okay, why the forest? Obviously, you cannot have bare grounds and hope them to soak out a lot of rainwater. You want the trees to be there to help trap more water because of the roots and all. Alright, and usually, I repeat, it's on higher ground. So that is what we call the water catchment area. And on the other hand, we also have a second source that is raw water from other intakes. So what are the other intakes? Yeah, typically we're talking about the rivers. If you recall our campus in Paya Raja, then we're talking about Sungai Semberong, which is not very far from our campus. Okay, and these are being taken into the impounding reservoir. What we call in Malay, the Malay term will be empangan. Empangan. And this is a huge thing. We have this water being stored up here, and from these high grounds, from the reservoir, it will be sent down to the treatment works, okay, for the water to be treated. And once that is done, this treated water is being sent to the balancing reservoir before it is being sent two ways. One, you go through a pumping station, sent to a higher ground for the service reservoir. So this is where you see those menara air, tall, big structures to store the water. Why? Because later on we'll see more in detail. We want the water head or the gravity flow, right, to bring the water to the users in lower ground, right? And the second way is to send to a service reservoir that's being on lower grounds and could have a pumping system to send the water out to the users. So either way, you can see we are having a storage system, right, a service reservoir before water is being distributed to the end users. Okay, in general, this is how they look like. And this is a hydrological cycle, just a quick recap of what you learned in hydrology. From all our raw water come from where? We have starting from the oceans, the rivers, streams, we have the sun shining bright during the day, then you have evaporation. So it says here that the ocean will contribute 80% of total water vapor in the air. And this water vapor in the air will go up because they are light and energized. When it goes up there, it reaches a lower temperature, it will condense and become what we call the clouds. Right? And these clouds will get together and become heavier and heavier, and the wind will bring them inland. And when they are too heavy, they will chuck down as precipitation, or we call water. When they reach the ground, we call them surface runoff, and the higher grounds, the cold places, they remain as snow. If you drop in the ocean, in Arctic and all, and the colder places in the Nordic countries and all, you have icebergs, alright? And they come through here, fall back onto Earth, and we have then captured in the mountains, come down through the streams and rivers to the lakes. It could be in the groundwater as well, and eventually they all go back to the rivers and the oceans. So this is how the cycle works, alright? And you probably notice that there's a small label here, the saltwater intrusion. Just a quick one about it, has nothing to do with this chapter, water reticulation. Saltwater intrusion is apparently quite a problem now in everywhere, including in Malaysia, where we are talking about, some blame it on the seawater rising due to climate change. But then again, some people have found that the climate change could be a natural process undergone by the earth, by Mother Earth itself, to cleanse itself of all the contamination that could be going on. And that's why we have ice age and all over time. But that we'll leave that to the climate scientists to decide. But what happens is that when you have the ocean or the sea coming more and more into the land, then this seawater, because of tidal effect, when the tide comes in, the seawater with the salt will go into the ground and start seeping into the groundwater, and this groundwater will go inland, and it will affect it badly affects our crops, agricultural land. And we know that most crops will not like, are sensitive to too much of sodium, too much of salt, too much of mineral in the grounds, and so this is happening in our place as well. They can you could Google up more about this if you want, and so we start talking about people building barriers to keep the seawater out, and agricultural land, traditional agricultural land that has been lost to the sea because the ground just cannot be used anymore. Not necessarily that we talk about the land being inundated or being flooded by seawater, not necessarily. We're talking about seepage actually from tidal effect bringing the salt in. Right? That's what we call the saltwater intrusion. This is just pengetahuan tepi, tak berkaitan dengan topik ni ya. Okay. And now we look at the bigger picture, right? We recall we talk about how water is being recycled, the hydrological cycle, and we talk about how the water is being taken from the catchment area to be contained in a reservoir, processed, and then sent out for our usage. But we also see here that it's true that we have a lot of development on the lower grounds, and we also learned in history that human civilization will always centralize in places where there is a river delta, right? Because when there's a river slowing down and you have a much fertile land, and when your river slowing down, coming to the ports, coming to the river mouth and all, then you could have ports and so on. So it actually encourages all the economic activities like agriculture commerce. So what happens when you have a lot of economical activities going on? Yes, people will start staying around there, and that is why 90% or more of a world population is concentrated along the coastal area. And because there's not much land left around there, or nothing left around there to be developed, or become too pricey, people start to move inland, and you start to have houses that are away from the sea, and probably in places that are not so nice anymore. If you recall, we learned in soil mechanics, we start to go into places where the grounds are actually no good at all to build anything. If you want to build anything, you need to do what? Ground improvement, and incur a lot more cost, right, to make the grounds habitable. Simply by making, in other words, making the ground strong enough to sustain whatever load you want to pop on it, whether it's a building, it's a bridge, or is in other infrastructure like roads and rail tracks and so on and so forth. So that is what happens similarly in our water intake. If you look here, when you come downstream, right, and when the human dwellings, industry and all is very concentrated, you can see things are getting more and more polluted. So the water that is being taken out around here is not suitable. It says here non-suitable raw water sources because of high contamination level. So we still will look for places that are on higher grounds, more pristine. You still have people staying around there, still have some factories and all, but at least they are less contaminated. That's how it goes. So it wouldn't overburden your water treatment plant, and that if you overburden the treatment plant, then you need more maintenance, and you need more alum and so on to treat the water, then the cost will go up. So when the water comes to us as consumer, the rates will be much higher, and then we'll make a lot of noise about it. We don't like it. Alright, so that's why the authority needs to find a lot of balance. Right, it's a balancing act in the getting this clean water to our houses. Okay. Now we look at the water supply facilities as addressed by a Uniform Technical Guideline (UTG). Apparently, this is a standard method of doing things. So very quickly, you have a raw water intake and the sub pump station. Right, you pump it into your water treatment plant. Once it's done, they'll send it out to the balancing system or the balancing reservoir, and from there you can send it out to wherever you need to use. Alright, and usually it's to places where human beings are. Okay, in this situation, you can see they send to this service area, and see that they have external service reservoirs before they start sending it out through the district meter into the individual service area. Similarly here. Okay, so this is a general picture of how they look like. We'll go later on into more detail, right, on these distribution systems. And in this layout, they give you an idea of how water recirculation is being implemented in a developed area. Okay, you can see these little points here. They are actually valves to ensure that, for instance, this area, this is a street, right, coming in, and these are all houses. On opposite side is Taman Perumahan. Okay, and the water pipe cannot be allowed to just go through around and around the taman without any stoppage. So these are little valves that we could put in to make sure that if there's any problem around this area, we could stop, close this and this valve, then this area is cordoned out. So water supply to this area is still maintained, while this area is stopped for the time being, so that services or maintenance work or repair work can be done. Okay, this is what happens. And now if you go out into your taman and start looking around, you probably start noticing, right, places where you have this little concrete block being set up there, and they put there, if it's in Johor, SAJ, and there's a symbol of two triangle, alright, two triangle joined together and two little sticks coming out. That is a valve there. So when the maintenance guy come in, they will look for these indicators before they use the tools to hook up whatever cover and deal with the valves there. Alright, so this is how they look like. Okay, now how do we supply water to a multi-rise buildings like apartments, flats, condominiums? Right, this is a lot, probably a lot more in the KL area, Klang Valley, than in places like a small town like Batu Pahat. Okay, and also because our ground conditions do not quite permit that. Okay, so we have this external reticulation, the main, so there's a main pipe coming through, and you tap it from there. Communication pipe come in. This is your property line. Okay, going in here, this is all private property area, and there's a bulk meter here. There's always a meter to monitor the water coming in from the main, and it comes in here. Yes, because it's a high-rise building, usually we have other services around, like what, swimming pool, general watering for what, for your landscape and things like that, cleansing activities. So it has this channel coming out here for that purpose, and the rest of the water will go where? Into your suction system, a pump, and it goes up to the block, say one block of 30 stories, it goes up there, and there's a shared storage system, okay, a shared tank basically, and that is being sent down to individual units. So if your house is at level 30 or level 10, level 11, it doesn't matter, the water will come down from the top to you. And in the individual dwellings, individual units, you have all the different fittings in there, whether the fittings is in the toilet, in the shower, in the kitchen, it comes down like this. Can you see? So in other words, for a high-rise building, flat, condo, apartment, as I said earlier on, you wouldn't have water coming in direct from the main. Okay, it always comes, you always get pumps up to your storage tank at the top of the building, and then it comes down again. So if the tank is empty, you have a problem. Okay. What about sending water to ordinary landed property? So similarly here, you can see you tap from the reticulation mains, come through a water meter, through coming through your property line. This is your private area now, Taman Perumahan for example. It goes right in. Where does it go? Individual cistern tank. So in every house you have their own water tank up there. Some people have two, and then it gets pumped down to all your different fittings. Alright. Later on we'll see in more detail. Not all water on a for a landed property, right, on the ground, not all water supply comes down from your water tank. Some actually comes through the main. Yeah, you guessed correctly. Water is always gushing happily if you turn on the kitchen tap. You are right, that's the one. Alright, usually it comes through from the back of the house into your kitchen. So your question is, why the kitchen? Obviously, kitchen is a place that we do most of the washing, and that's a place where most water is required. Okay. Okay, and here we have 9 factors. Yeah, 9 factors you got to bear in mind when we talk about planning water supply systems in a place. Alright, and number 1, we are talking about the provisions, minimum standards that are specified in the Water Services Industry Water Reticulation and Internal Plumbing Rules 2014. This may be revised over time, so if you are working in this industry, you got to be alert about the changes in it. Number 2, water distribution, the licensees, their specific requirements to suit the local environment. This comes down to the local water provider, SAG, SMP and all. Number 3, what is the estimated average daily water supply demand? This will take into consideration the expected losses and leakages during your distribution and storage, and also permitted non-metered use, peak daily rates of flow, and so on and so forth. This is interesting. There are 2 points that are very interesting here. That is, in order to know how much average water is required for a place, you need to consider not just about the number of consumers, number of units, and number of people staying, and all, so on and so forth. You need to take into consideration the expected losses and leakages as well. Yeah, there's a certain percentage that is attributed to that. So this is something that is, if you like, is a safety factor, because all these water service pipes are buried underground. So if there's a small leakage, you wouldn't be able to detect it until a very long time later, all right? And until probably the leakage becomes more severe, then you start to notice it, all right? If it's a service pipe coming into your house, you start to notice it when you see your bill increasing significantly in the month or several months down the road, and most likely it's because of a leaking pipe, not a burst pipe, a leaking pipe. Alright, so that has to be considered, because whenever there's a leakage, we learn in hydraulics or mechanical earlier, then the water pressure will come down. It will affect all other people. Alright, hence they need to know what is the possible losses and leakages taken into consideration, so the pressure that's being applied later on from the main coming through our service pipes into the residential area is sufficient. The second interesting point is about the non-metered use. This is the more specific term that these water companies will use is non-revenue water, NRW. It is a big headache for these water companies, because in simple terms, is air yang kena curi lah. Non-revenue water, people tapping from the service pipes, use it happily without being charged. There's no meter and so on. So it is illegal. Remember, don't do it. Okay. Number 4, we look at the location, the quantity, and the pressure available from where? From the source of the water supply. So it comes on the main. You got to know if the main is already servicing many other places, many other taman, then you want to tap from it, that may cause a problem, because you can take it, but the pressure may not be so nice, may not be so adequate, and it will affect other tamans, existing taman. And this is actually a problem that is being faced in Payet Raja because of the unexpected boom of the population, and also the number of taman perumahan that pop up here, there, everywhere like mushroom some years back. Right? I believe SAG has rectified the problem. So at some point in those times, times, at peak hours, you need not do anything because there will be no water coming out from the tap at all. Right? If you have a storage tank and your storage is large enough, then you're lucky. You could have still some water to shower and things, but other than that, it could be quite a nightmare. Right? Factor number 5 is about the requirement for on-site water service reservoirs and also off-site centralized service reservoirs. In other words, the reservoirs. Right? Number 6 is there a need for your pumping system to send the water out. Number 7, the life cycle cost. All these things can't be expected to live forever or to function forever without maintenance. So the life cycle costs need to be considered. Energy efficiency is factor number 8. It's a very important factor to consider. Once you start using pumps, for example, then you talk about you need energy or electricity, in other words, to run the pump. Otherwise, you're talking about generators. So if you want to run a generator, you either have people keep going into the pump house to pour diesel fuel into the pump, or you need to have your own generator to keep it running. And that generator is running using what? Is still electricity main coming from TNB and so on. So that has to be considered. And the last but not least, the point is about monitoring and controlling on the distribution of the water supply of adequate quality. This is a very sensitive matter, right? People expect when they turn on the tap in their house, the water is safe, the water is not yellowish, the water doesn't have sediment and stuff like that. So the water quality, the safety of things, if you like. And hence today many homes will have their own water treatment systems, whether it's outside the house, like those little rockets to filter the water before coming in, and in the house they have their own special water drinking water treatment system, whether it's Koei, Coco or whatever brand that is, to make sure that the water that they drink is of the highest quality and of safe quality, and sometimes even have got they provide some health bonus values. I don't know. Okay, so that is a matter of choice. All right. And now let's look at how water is being taken from the main source for distribution into the area. Okay, water supply distribution system can be classified into 3 types: the gravity system, the pump system, or a combination of both. And how do we decide on this? It depends on several factors: the topography, the ground conditions, the location, the extent of your distribution area, elevation, and also the site conditions. So in other words, really it depends on where the developed area is. Is it on the high ground, low ground? Is it difficult to access? Right? If it's too far down, too far away from the main grid, what are you going to do? You got to probably tap another service pipe into it. Or if it's a too large a development area, mixed development, especially with hospitals, schools are a big one. Then if you tap from the existing main, it may be inadequate because the main is already supplying or servicing other places, as I mentioned earlier on. So these are the factors that you need to consider. Okay. So now let's take a look at what is meant by the gravity system. As the name implies, we're looking at something that is being placed high up using just gravity, just the height of it, to bring the water down for supply to the users. It is suitable when your source of supply is of sufficient height, most reliable and economical. Water head is available because of the height. Okay, and the remaining head, you must assume that it's being taken up by friction and other losses, because as water gush down your pipes, surely there is friction and other losses, maybe some leakage, and we know that losses can be due to noise, friction, and so on. All right. The next one is the pump system. So in this case, your water is being pumped, all right, directly into the distribution, right, without any reservoir. There's no storage. See, water supply, treatment. After treatment, you take directly from treatment plant or from the balancing system, goes through a pump and goes straight to your residential area, for example. So imagine in this situation, definitely you need a high lift pump, a good, powerful pump. There is a catch. If the power supply fails, your pump breaks down, or there is a blackout, then there is no electricity, no power supply, there will be a complete stoppage of water supply, because there's no water coming in from the source, there's no pump that will bring the water in, and hence this method is not particularly favored. All right. A combined system, this is most common actually, so you get the best of both worlds. What it does is that your treated water is pumped and stored in an elevated distribution reservoir. You still have a reservoir, and then it goes through to your consumer by gravity, obviously, right, in this part. And you also have the excess water during low demand that is stored, but you can get it during high demand. But other times, you use it directly from a pump, right, from the treatment plant. It pump right out and go to your service area. So this is a combined system. So note here that during low demand, it's like what is the peak time? Well, probably from 6 in the morning, right, until 8 before people rush off to schools and offices. Maybe in PKP it's slightly different. Whole day maybe it's peak, I'm not sure, because I'm busy cooking and baking. Let's talk about normal situation, right? Not the PKP situation. And you have in the morning it's like 6 to 8 is peak hour. Everyone is turning on all their taps for shower, cooking, and so on and so forth. Some people are watering their plants and so on. So that's a time where the water pressure must be sufficient to provide for everyone. Alright, where's the second peak time? Yeah, right, in the evening when everyone comes back, that will be right probably between 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. That's the time where everybody will start to have their shower, to cook for dinner, and so on and so forth. So that's a peak time. But other times in between, it's actually what we call the low demand time. Alright, so during the low demand time, that is where the water is being pumped and to fill up the reservoir, so that during peak time, the reservoir will be able to provide for the people, for the users adequately. So that's how it works. Okay? Alright, now let's take a look at how water is being supplied into a residential area. I think by now, after the 26 minutes of what we have shared earlier on, you already have a pretty clear idea of how it's done. This is going to a little bit more detail. After the cleaning process of treatment, then your water supply system will go through a main pipe system that has several major pipelines, obviously, and this main pipeline system will connect to the storage pool or the pumping station, to the communication pipes that will supply water to the building. Alright, and this piping system varies from one area to another. It depends on the size and characteristic of the area. Okay, and these are the factors you need to consider that can affect your main piping system. Like what? The physical condition of your soil and contour distribution area. If it's hilly, undulating, the pipe goes up, down. When too much or up, too little down, then you know it will affect the pressure. Distance between the distribution area and the main, if it's too far away, it can also reduce the pressure and its cost laying a long pipe, and there's always a safety issue of the pipe malfunctioning, it's a crack, it's a leak, things like that. Ability to balance the needs of consumer with the water production, number and types of users. Industry and ordinary residential area are two different things, right? Hospitals, for example, are different. Recreational area with big pools, that's different. Ability of water supply during peak demand is very critical, and water loss in terms of friction and other leakages. Okay, and this is a slide giving us a brief description of the types of water pipes that we come across. So the first one is the major pipes, the main pipes, and these are the first pipes that will come out of a storage reservoir or a pumping station. Now you see this a lot. This is actually an S-bend crossing the road, so being raised with a concrete block and things. Okay, and they bring water. It could also be bringing water on other main pipes to another area. Okay, your users will not receive directly from these. These are high pressure stuff. You don't want these. You'll burst all your fittings in the house. It doesn't happen. And usually these, the diameters of these are between 225 to 300 mm or more. They are large ones, laid onto the ground, placed on concrete supports, like what we saw here. All right. And at the peak of the pipe, you have wind valve to avoid occurrence of water friction. See, these are wind valves to release. They are being opened to release the air. All right, especially when there is a low supply followed by a restoration of the supply. So someone will have to come and open the valve to let go of the wind. You sometimes probably have this problem in our house as well. When there is a water stoppage, and when the water supply comes back again, there's a valve or a fitting that we need to open. We know which one in the house, so that the air trapped in the pipe can be released and wouldn't block the water from flowing through. Okay. Then we look at the secondary pipes. These are the small fraction of major pipelines that could bring water to residential areas, factories, and the farms. This is taking from the main going to the users now. You enable the users to obtain water directly from the tap. Okay, from the tap. Turn on the tap, the water comes on main. All right, brought in by who? By the secondary pipe. And the sizes are 225 to 300, and they're planted in the soil. And these are buried. All right, usually about 750 mm or more below the ground. All right. Why does it have to be buried here, right? Because if you are coming to residential or the consumers, you surely have other infrastructure like roads. So if you imagine you have these pipes running on the ground, on the road shoulder, people don't like it. Alright, take up space, it's dangerous to the motorcyclists and the cyclists, it is an eyesore and things like that, and hence they are buried. And when they are buried, things are buried, they are not seen. When they are not seen, then that is a situation where we cater for the possible leakages and losses that we talked about earlier. And these pipes must be allowed to withstand pressure and the soil covering it and the weight of vehicle that could possibly be put on top of it. Because it's on the road shoulder, you can't expect people not to park, right? Yeah. And the next type of pipe is the service pipe. This is a small fraction of your secondary pipe. It gives water where to the area, and the size is sufficient to bring water to the area. The size is about 100 mil to 100 mil, and you bury it 750 or more. These are smaller ones now. Okay, going into the users. Okay. Okay, now we look at the different types of system used in the water distribution network. There are 4 types here: the dead-end type, the ring system, the grid iron system, and the radial system. Hopefully, once we have gone through the description of all these 4, you have in mind of which one you would pick. If you could pick which one would you pick to be introduced or implemented in the new area because of the pros and the cons being considered. This is a dead-end system. Alright, a dead-end system is very suitable for old towns and cities when there's no definite patterns of roads. Okay, look, M is the main. There's a one main coming in. Wherever there is need, alright, you just branch off and service them. You see, B is the other branches. S are the sub-main. So the sub-main will tap from the main, like in this case it's a main, remember, M. Sub-main will tap from it, comes down here, and then all the branches come out to service all the people there. Okay, and the system will have main, a major pipe, sub-main, branch pipe, distribution is the same. The system is the same. Advantages: cheap, because it goes everywhere. It's simple. You don't have to plan too much. Some pipes are long, some pipes are short. Determination of discharges and pressure is easier because of less number of valves. Disadvantage is that there are many dead ends, so there could be stagnation of water in the pipes. This is because of the pressure being the pressure, and also could be air being trapped in the pipes. Okay, let's look at the ring system. So in this case, the supply main is laid all along the peripheral roads, and the sub-mains branch out from the mains. So look here, this is the main coming in, and it says on the peripheral road. So periphery, alright, this is the perimeter, so it goes down on the outside, and whatever that is inside, it taps with your sub-mains to go in to service the people. Alright, this is how it works. And it follows the grid iron system. Later on we'll see the grid iron system. The flow pattern similar. There are dead end as well, and easy to decide how big the pipes could be. And what are the advantages? You can supply your water to any point in at least 2 directions. Alright, because there's periphery, the perimeter has got the main. You want to go to this point, you come in from here, you come in from here. Disadvantage is that again, many dead ends, there could be stagnation of water. Let's look at the grid iron system. This is good for people who have a rectangular layout. Alright, and the name will tell you is a grid system. So again, you have a main coming in right in the middle, and from there all the sub-mains are coming out, and when the subs are come out, they'll service a smaller area. These are the branches. Okay, it's very organized. So the advantage is that water is kept in good circulation because there are no dead ends. They go in the grid, right? It comes back. In case of breakdown in some section, you can get water from another direction. We talked about this before. And what is the disadvantage? It is not very easy to calculate the sizes of pipe because of what the valves are all everywhere. Why are the valves being introduced? We talked about this before again. If we do not have valves at every junction, then if there is a breakdown of the system, the leakage or what, then they have to shut down the main, then everyone in this area will not have water. So there are many valves all over the place to make sure that they can minimize the disturbance. Alright? Next is the radial system. This is a situation where you divide your distribution the area into zones. Water is pumped into the distribution reservoir and kept in the middle of each zone. Main coming in, you do not take from it, you go straight, right, to a reservoir. From the reservoir, water is being channeled out, see, radially towards the periphery. So people around here will receive water from the reservoir. So if you look at it, this system seems to be the most organized and safest, right? Advantages: quick service, calculation of pipe is easy because water is coming not from the main or your sub-main, it comes from where? It comes from your reservoir. And one center comes down to the people, so it's a lot easier to calculate quite accurately. Disadvantage is that it's high cost because of a great number of individual distribution reservoirs, and many dead ends, stagnation of water could happen as well. So apparently the stagnation situation could happen in all systems except the gridiron system, okay, because the water can come from two areas, two directions, okay. So that's all for now. We'll look at the second part of the topic in the next video. Bye bye.